She may have been just 17, but that did not stop young Vaama Baldota for not just talking the talk, but actually walking it. Having built her own empire and ecosystem that provides multiple resources, information, and support for anyone dealing with mental, physical, and sexual abuse, it is an absolute matter of pride and privilege to have this same strong, determined, inspiring, and all round amazing individual sitting right opposite me. Hello, Vaama. What an honor it is to have you here with us today.
Hi, thanks. That's really sweet.
So, to kick things off, Vaama, please tell me and the viewers a little bit about your company, iDare, and what it is that your team does back at base.
For sure. So, iDare is an ecosystem of information, support, and resources for anybody dealing with mental health issues, relationship issues, or any form of abuse. So, we basically work through an app. It's the first 360-degree approach to abuse or mental health, and it's the first digital platform to ever do that. So, we have an app. On the app, we have 4 different verticals. First one's called Inspire, where we have articles, videos, and stories of people who've been through abuse, who've been through mental health issues, how they've gotten through it, for people to get inspired. We also have some articles to recognize abuse, because a lot of times when you're being abused, you don't know what's going on with you.
Yeah.
That's what we have on Inspire. Then we have something called Engage, where we have different workshops, therapists, life coaches, self-defense trainers, lawyers, all of them on the platform that you can book and take a session with. Then we have something called Safety Map. So we've basically tied up with about 22 different safe zones in the entire of Bangalore. And we're hoping to do like one safe zone in every kilometer soon. But that's a safe zone that you can go to in an emergency. So you're trying to run away, you need to go somewhere, that's the place. You can find it on our maps and route to the closest safe zone next to you. And lastly, which is my personal favorite, is the support. So I think the whole journey of mental health and abuse is extremely lonely. And I think a lot of people are like don't get the help they need because it's such a lonely journey. So we have something called support, which is a 24/7 call chat support, free completely. It's basically like having a friend who would be there to listen to you when you're venting, but also has knowledge and capabilities to give you advice if you need it. So that's basically all the 4 verticals on the app. So what we've tried to do on the app is to build like an end-to-end support system for somebody dealing with any of the issues, like I said, relationship, mental health, or abuse, right? So from the point of like you recognizing what's happening to you to, your entire journey of healing, we're there for you and we're there to support you. That's the whole objective behind the app.
Wow, I'm truly speechless. That's
Thank you.
such a wonderful initiative, and wow, truly, I'm so thankful for you and like to you and the team back at base for doing this for everyone. It's something that I think I can speak for everyone, and I say that we all need it, right? So another question that I have is, what exactly inspired you to start this platform, and why is mental health and seeking help for abuse so important to you personally? Like,
Sure. So actually to explain that, I'll have to take you down memory lane.
please do.
So I started off working in this field when I was 17, like you said. And at that point, I think Nirbhaya just happened, and I was studying in the UK in boarding school. And I was just reading news about this. And I don't know, something in me just felt off. I couldn't sleep for days. I would have recurring nightmares. That same summer, when I came back, I actually would tutor a couple of kids near my locality. I'm from this place called Hospet Hampi. And, I would teach English to those kids over there. And one of the kids over there was abused by her parent. And she came and spoke to me. And, we spoke to her mom. And the mom said, we can't do anything about it. And all of these things that happened. And I think all of this together made me feel like, no, I don't want to go to college right now. I want to actually do something about this. And I sort of felt like this was my calling, There were so many microaggressions that personally I had faced, and I think people I knew had faced, but we'd never termed it as sexual abuse. Whether that is being like touched inappropriately by like a dance teacher or anything, right?
Called, yeah.
Yeah, or catcalled. So all these different things is when I realized that, you know what, like I want to do something about it. And that's when I started Dare. So Dare is a non-profit where we would train school children on awareness about sexual abuse and self-defense. So till date, we've trained about 9 lakh kids.
Wow.
And in during the workshops, what we found was a couple of different things. One, that a lot of kids who came to us about being abused told that they were abused by somebody they already knew, you know, and for them, the solution wasn't having like panic button apps. For them, the solution was to have someone to go and talk to know what they can actually do, what their rights are, how can they access those rights, what is the support system they have, right? To feel like they've got somebody. And basically, all these bottlenecks that we saw through the workshop is what led to me building iDare. So I went, basically, we would do the workshops. I had a team doing the workshops here, and I went off to college in the US. I came back, used those bottlenecks, and then developed this app. And that's how the whole thing came about. And I think the way mental health got related and relationships got related to this whole, this was, I think, a lot of these kids that came up to us like also spoke to us about like the effect that abuse had on their mental health.
Correct.
You know, and I think and the effect it had on their relationships today. So when they were abused as a kid, how did it affect them feeling safe today in their relationships? How were they repeating some patterns, you know? So all of these different things made us actually work on these 3 different realms together.
Yeah, amazing. This so truly commendable, your journey. And you know, everybody always wants to do something, but you ended up actually doing the thing, and that's truly so commendable. And
I think that's actually thankful to the privilege I've had. So, I mean, it's like a lot of people want to do it, but they don't have the privilege of, you know, so I don't have to worry about like, oh, like I don't have a family right now, thankfully, to feed. Like they are all self-sufficient and everything, right? And they're there backing me. So I think I've had that privilege to actually do what I want without having to worry about these kind of things.
Again, I know it's coming impromptu for you, but again, I so appreciate you even being able to recognize the privilege. It's so, I am in like fully adoring your personality. So now next up, a bit more like regarding your personality. Yeah. So being a commerce student myself, I think it's something that we've all heard, like don't fall asleep at the wheel and like, you know, never give up. It's a rat race, dog eat dog world and whatnot, right? So being a part of that, you know, rat race yourself, how is it that you prioritize your mental health being in this, you know, dog eat dog world?
Oh, wow. That's a very, you know, that's something that I'm constantly working on because I don't think like I found like my solution yet.
Of course, yeah.
But I think the couple of things I do, one is obviously take therapy for myself, right? I have a therapist who I've been seeing for the last, I don't know how many years actually. I personally had my own journey with mental health issues. I've struggled with anxiety and depression and been on medication and everything. So I've had my own journey, and I think seeing a therapist has like literally got me through it. Like the reason I feel like I'm alive today is because of my therapist, very simply put. And also because of like the support system I have, which I think is super important when it comes to dealing with mental health, is to have like a very strong support system, because there will be times, especially when you're dealing with like depression, where you will just want to block everybody out, and that's natural to me, you know. Like the minute I start feeling low, it's like I isolate, and how I will be like a bear in hibernation, like nobody will see me, nobody will hear from me. And thankfully I've had friends and family who understand that, respect that, and still know when to push me to be like, you know what, today you're coming out, we don't care. And then there'll be days when they'll be like, actually, you know what, take your time. So having a support system that understands you means everything, I would say. And also, I think this is something I'm working on, is not feeling guilty about taking breaks. I think especially in a startup world where it's all about growing fast. And working in the field of mental health is like, oh, you can't make mistakes because you're dealing with real people and their lives, right? I think it's very easy to take yourself too seriously, to feel like you can't take a break. If you're taking a break, you know, you're not being productive. You're not worth anything. And I think reminding yourself that you deserve breaks just because you're human, not because of what you're doing and stuff. You don't have to justify your breaks. I don't like, it's very common for me to be like, oh, I worked so much today, which is why I can sleep for 8 hours. No, like I should sleep for 8 hours because I'm a human and I deserve to sleep for 8 hours, you know? And I think that is something I need to keep telling myself also. And I think lastly, what I do for my mental health is basically not prioritizing my worth with what I do, which is very important. Because either you take yourself too seriously then, or you like, you know, are like, oh, I'm not worth anything because I didn't do this goal, then I didn't do this goal, then I don't do that goal, right? So I think those things are really important. So therapy, having therapy, support system, taking breaks, and not taking yourself, you know, too seriously, and just being like going with the flow, I guess.
I see myself, like a lot of myself in you, by the way. And the entire time you were speaking, honestly, I just wanted to say, yes, queen, word, I agree. It's so true. And I so get where you're coming from. And I'm so glad that you're seeing a therapist and that you're doing better. It's really cool. And yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
So, like you've mentioned yourself that you've been seeing a therapist and you've battled your own issues, right? And your entire app is regarding mental health and physical sexual abuse. So is there any one such stigma, stereotype, or mental health issue like anxiety or an eating disorder or anything that you have in mind particular that you're specifically, you know, you feel strongly about, that you connect with? Is there anything in mind like that?
I think the whole realm of trauma is something that, you know, especially at iDare, we work very strongly with. So all the people in my team have gone through training for being trauma informed. So I think that's one thing we really pride ourselves in, is to be able to provide trauma informed care. And what I mean by that is there are small things that I think we all in some form or the other have some form of childhood trauma. I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but like most of us do, right? And a lot of us just compare it to each other, saying like, mine's not as bad or mine's not this. But trauma is not like that. Trauma is based on what happened to you. It's your subjective thing. And so we all have trauma. We all have different triggers. And when we're providing care for somebody or when we're supporting somebody, how can we be informed of their trauma? How can we do something that doesn't trigger their trauma? So what I'd mean by that is, say someone comes to us for call chat support, right? And they're talking to us about abuse. What kind of questions should they not ask? Should my team not ask so that the trauma isn't triggered? So, for example, it might be a little, you know, I'd like to give a trigger warning because this might actually bring up emotions. So, for example, if someone comes to us with sexual abuse, we can't ask them, were you drunk? What were you wearing? Those things are just unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. So being mindful of those kind of things is very, very important.
Wonderful.
And I think that's something that we all like take pride in, is being trauma informed.
So is there like a, you know, specific training session that all these...
Yeah, so my entire team, as soon as they join, have to go through a training session on providing trauma informed care.
Wonderful. I did this, there's this little thing that I've done, like, so when I go through something, I do this. It's kind of like a coping mechanism where I research about it. Like this one type A personality of mine comes out and I go on and I research about it. And to validate myself, something that helped me was everyone has these like tiny T's and big T's, like little trauma and big trauma. But sometimes even those, you know, little trauma being built up is enough for you to break down. You know, it doesn't have to be one big bad thing. And PTSD doesn't have to be like you having to be like a war,
right?
You know, like a patron or something like that, right? So yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And even with taking breaks, like you mentioned, you know, there's this thing that I believe in, that if you don't take breaks, then your body will take one for you and it won't be at your...
That's so true. I've had that happen to me so many times. It's so funny.
Yeah. But tell me the funniest story.
Okay, so this one time I was on a family holiday in Turkey with my family, and we were at the airport going to Istanbul, and basically you know, I was exhausted. I'd been working a lot, and I was like, dude, I just want to like, and it's very privileged of me to say it, but I was really exhausted. I was like, I just want to fall sick so I can sleep for 2-3 days straight and not do anything. And you're not gonna believe, we land in and I get a fever. And I'm like, okay, this is strange. Have to go take a COVID test. It was a 1 week long trip. I was quarantined the entire week because I got COVID. And it was literally like my body saying, you know what, you needed that rest, take
Yeah.
it. So many times I fall sick because like my body just needs rest. And now I think it's very, now what I've tried to do is basically recognize these moments that like, I know I'm about to fall
These
sick,
signs.
and that's like the signs that my body is saying, you know what, you've pushed yourself too much. It's time you take a break. So I think I do that. Also, what you were saying about like researching whatever I'm going through, I do that all the time. And you know, my therapist said something really like mind blowing to me. He's like, you research it because you're not used to feeling it. So why we research these things is because we're trying to intellectualize whatever we're feeling.
Yeah.
We're intellectualizing our emotions, but we're not really feeling it. We'll name them, we'll say them out loud, but we're not doing anything to feel them in our bodies and stuff like that. And I think same personality, I think like
Really?
it's very easy for me to intellectualize what I'm feeling, but never like actually feel the feeling. So I get you when you say that.
Nice, good. I'm relating to you on a whole different spectrum right now. So my next question is, people who deal right with mental and sexual abuse, and myself included, with like these small mental health issues that we all face, right? We are most of the times the most hesitant to ask for help. It's usually the people that before they recognize that okay, they have to take help, they would have gone too like deep in the ditch, and now they feel like they can't come out, and it's most usually the people who are the most affected that are the most hesitant to ask for help. So what advice do you have to people like them and like us?
I think I don't know about advice. This quote from a book that I really love. So this boy asks a horse, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And the horse says, "Help." And the horse says that sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing you can ever say, because asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of giving up. It's actually a sign of saying that, you know what, I want to get better.
Okay.
So a lot of times we also feel like if I ask for help, I'd be weak, or I don't want to burden somebody by asking for help. But there are enough and more people in this world who'd be willing to go on a limb for you and do things for you, right? And I think it's very important to recognize that it's never too late. I've had so many instances in my life that I felt like, you know what, like I just want to give up. There won't be hope. And somewhere in something, I found a glimmer of hope. So it's literally about finding those moments of hope in every day. And I'm not saying you'll not feel like that again. Healing isn't like a linear journey. It's something that, you know, it's like one this, and then you feel like
sure.
you've taken 3 steps back. But then actually, a friend of mine told me healing, when you see healing, you see it like a line. It's not a line, it's concentric circuits. So even though you're feeling like you're going backwards, you're actually going closer to the point of healing.
Wow, that's
So yeah, and I was like, wow, okay, you know, that changed the way I think about it, because I have so many moments where I'm like, why again? Like, you know, you'll feel like you've healed,
Yeah.
and then one day you'll just find yourself crying about the same thing again, and I'm like,
something would
what?
have triggered.
Why? You know, and it's like, why should I keep doing this again and again? I'm not getting any better. But then I realized I am, because I think the frequency of me feeling really bad was every day for like a month. Then it went down to like, you know, once in 3 weeks. So like that, it's going down. And I noticed that. And I noticed I'll have phases, but then those phases won't be as bad anymore. And I'll have more hope that I can get through it because I got through it before. So I think two completely important things is, one, ask for help, because there's nothing wrong with it, you know, and it's actually a sign of strength. And two is like, don't give up. There is so many things in this world that are amazing. There's so many people who are going to love you that you haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
There are so many places that you're going to go that you're actually going to feel like home. So don't devoid yourself of those experiences, because right now feels difficult, is all I would say.
Wow, that's wonderful. I'm taking more than just like a sliver of that back home with me as well. So now with like, you know, these the types of Andrew Tate and like this, you know, Sigma male and I'm alpha male and all that, you know, whole tomfoolery coming up. What would you like to say to men? And let's be honest, as a woman myself and as a feminist, I still recognize that it's a lot more harder for men to ask for help, to be honest, because, you know, society's taught them to like, you know, be more brave and you're the breadwinner, how like dare you cry, and even when like the small, I've seen it myself in my family where like my cousin would be crying and their aunt and like my aunt would be like, no, don't cry, men don't cry, strong boys don't cry. So what do you have to say to like the male viewers and like the people who identify with like the male spectrum of feeling emotions? What do you have to say to them regarding asking for help and emotions and crying?
I think we were all born to express. We would not have tear glands if we were not meant to cry, right? I think we are socially conditioned to be certain ways, and that might not necessarily be what serves all of us. So this is something I always say to everyone. Patriarchy, the fight against feminism is not men. The fight against feminism is patriarchy.
Correct, for
right?
sure.
And patriarchy affects women a lot, but it also affects men.
For sure,
Because
yeah.
there are gender roles specifically made for women, and then there are gender roles specifically made for men. And there's an entire spectrum of gender that's completely kept outside the society because of patriarchy.
Correct.
Right? The LGBTQI community, for example. And with men, it becomes that they have to play this role of being a breadwinner, being masculine, where emotions and things like that don't come into place.
Yeah.
But this is where it's wrong, right? Where you are feeling those emotions, but because you're not allowed to express them in ways of like crying or speaking about it, you express them in different ways. Everybody expresses emotions. It's more acceptable for a man to show anger than it is for him to cry. Right? And we need to recognize what of that is conditioned. For years, men are conditioned to show anger. But anger actually can be one of the biggest forms of abuse.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Emotional abuse. And so you're basically setting up our men for failure by telling them that you can show anger, which will be termed as abuse, but you cannot cry. So it's very, very important to tell men time and again for all of us to create that space for men, as women, as a society,
Sure.
that everyone can express their emotions safely in a safe space without having to worry about what the other person will think about me, or, without having to give somebody advice. Like, just be there, support that person, If somebody's crying, just hold their hand. I think that's all they need.
Yeah, for sure. Another question is, so how important it is for asking for help, and like how you said that the bravest thing that you can do is say help, right? But there are many times that people do ask for help, and they come up to their parents, especially let's be honest, it's a bit more widespread in the Asian community, where you ask your parents like, hey, I'm not okay, I need help, and they immediately victimize themselves. But that's not their fault as well. It's really just a generation of cycles that it's up to us to break.
Yeah.
But you go up to them and you tell them, hey, I'm not okay, I need help, and they're very hesitant and reluctant to provide that help that they need. And this is minus the financial resources, I'm saying emotionally.
Of
So
course.
what do you have to tell to the parents that are like watching this video? Like,
I think it's very important to recognize that mental health is a very real thing. So when you are sick, you go to a doctor. When you're physically sick, you go to a doctor. You're not physically sick, right?
Yeah.
And mental health is exactly the same. Physical health is taking care of your body. Mental health is taking care of your mind. So when you are sick, you go to a doctor. When you're emotionally you also have to seek help. You also have to go to a doctor, because otherwise it's not gonna get better.
Yeah.
Maybe it will in some form or the other, but to actually solve the issue, you can't just be like, oh, go for a run or stop using your phone.
Yeah.
Which is what we hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. I think you're making it up in your head and things like that.
I go through worse and I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. We went through so much. We didn't have time or space to actually, complain.
Yeah, for sure.
And I understand where that is coming from, right? But having said that, that did lead to who you are as a person today. You coped with all. This is what I would like to say to the parents, and which is what I say to my parents as well. That y'all went through a very different time where y'all had to worry about your survival, about, feeding a family and all of that. So y'all didn't have the time or space to actually take care of yourselves. And whereas that is like that's what you had to do. There's nothing, that needs to be glorified about it. I
Oh my God,
really
yes.
respect it, and I really am grateful that you did all of this for me. But we don't have to glorify that, because y'all not taking care of yourselves is shown today, is shown in your mechanisms today.
For sure.
And it's very important for even parents to reflect, and it's not late for them also to seek help.
For sure.
I say that to my parents as well, and I think somewhere they also get like a little bit of it now, where they're like, what, I think maybe we also need to like talk to somebody and all of those things. I think that's very important for parents also to recognize that somewhere it's like a cycle of trauma, like you said.
Yeah.
It's what their parents gave them, it's what in different ways now they give us. And to be cycle breakers, you have to seek help. There is no other way to do it. And if your kid is coming to you and telling you they need help, know that they've done 80% of the battle. That 20% is in your hand. How you support them will change their course of life, will change how they see the entire of their lives and how healthy they are for the rest of their lives. So don't let that 20% go, is what I would say.
Wonderfully put. I love the statistics that you given. I love that. Another question that I have is, also regarding the parents, there's that certain line that they say, "Oh, we give food to you though," and like we there's a roof over your head, you have food in the fridge. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
So what do you have to say to that?
I think honestly, this is like something I say to anyone and everyone. If someone comes and tells you that they feel hurt by you, you can't tell them that they don't.
Yeah.
Right? It's as simple as that. You might not have done anything intentionally,
For sure.
but you can't control how somebody else is feeling at the end of the day. Right? If I say that I'm feeling hurt, I can't tell you that you're not feeling hurt. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how feelings work either. And I also can't tell myself that I'm not feeling hurt, because I am. Right? So you can't tell someone that they, like, you can explain to them your point of view and maybe clarify and work on a journey of healing together. But I don't think anybody can tell anyone that you should be great. Like, gratefulness is not the opposite of like hurt.
Yeah.
Like, I can be grateful and still be hurt. These emotions can coexist.
Valid. Yeah. So another question that I had is, so of course, like, mental health is very real, but like, truly, I feel like rape is the most inexcusable crime. I mean, you could steal and you could say, "Oh yeah, my family's starving back home," or I have like huge loads of debt, but like rape is just inexcusable, right? And slight trigger warning for anyone watching. But what it is that, like, what would you like to say to anyone hiding there, who's too afraid to ask for help, most of the time too in denial of what happened to them, and just what would you like to say to them, those beautiful, beautiful people that had to go through such unfortunate circumstances?
I think what I'd probably want to say to them is, I'm really sorry for what happened, because I think this is something that is not a very individual issue. It's a community issue, right? And we all are responsible for each other's safety. And I'm sorry for what happened, but that does not define how your life's gonna go anymore, right? You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be taken care of. You deserve to be safe and understood. And no one should tell you otherwise, and you should not feel otherwise, right? Whether you decide to seek help or not, whether you decide to talk about it or not, that's a very individual choice, right? The way you want to cope with it is completely up to you. But know that there is an entire family of people wanting to love you and support you whenever and whatever part of the journey you're in. And I think that's what iDare is for me, right? Anybody in any part of their journey, whether they want to talk about it or not, whether they want to report it, any part of their journey, they know they have somebody who will love them unconditionally, be there for them unconditionally. And so do not feel alone in this process, because you're not. We're here for you, and we will get through this together.
Beautiful. I'm very I want to extend my awe for a longer time, but for professional purposes we'll keep it at awe. But yeah, wonderfully said. Another thing I'd like to ask is, you mentioned how you always have like a family of people to support you, and like friends and family, but unfortunately some people just don't have that, or maybe they have that and they don't see it. So what would you like to say to those people who truly feel alone, like, and maybe genuinely are, maybe they don't have a
Yeah.
family, like a family back home that support them, maybe their family were the abusive people,
Of course.
maybe because of which they, self-sabotaged and ruined their friendships as well. So like, what would you like to say someone that's like, truly not, of course nobody's fully alone, but like, a bit not having a strong like shoulder to fall back on or
Yeah.
to cry on? What would you like to say to
So
them?
actually, when I said family, I meant like us at iDare. So
Ah,
I
okay.
wasn't trying to say like family in the most conventional sense.
Okay.
So I was trying to say that, even when we don't have that, you guys, you all have us, is what I was trying to say. Because I think, yeah, a lot of times, especially with the people we deal with, a lot of the abuse we see is within their family. And when the place that is supposed to keep you safe the most, which is your home, is not a place of safety, it shakes you up, for the lack of a very understatement. It shakes
Yeah.
you up, right? And in that moment, it's very difficult to not feel alone or to trust somebody else. And which is why, like, I think, in my opinion, what the support feature does is so important on the app is because it is building on that. It is telling you that, whatever you're going through, you don't have to do it alone. Whether that is that in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., you're feeling worthless and you want to talk about it, you can. You're feeling angry and you want to talk about it, you can. You want to do something about it, don't know how, you can. And all of this part, we will be there for you. You don't have to do it alone, which is where I'm coming from. That, like, which is why I think in my head, iDare is that like support system you need. And I think that's something like I think I needed when I was, going through stuff and I didn't have it. I think that's one of the biggest reasons for making something like this.
Beautiful. So we talked about, the one receiving aspect of, the trauma and mental health, right? But another thing that I'd like to bring up is, the other aspect, the support system aspect, as in not the company, but as in the friends and family that we have, right? Because most of the time, um, let's be honest, people who are depressed, I feel like I can say this because I've seen it in myself, or just doesn't have to be depression, but people who are going through something tend to self sabotage, tend to explode, tend to have those, impulsive, bad reactions and whatnot,
Yeah.
right? And it might get a bit much for the other party as well. And even maybe what you've gone through, of course, is awful, but maybe somebody else hearing that cannot take that. So there's a lot of things on the other aspect of it as well.
Right.
So what would you like to tell to the people on the other end of things? And this comes in the form of like when somebody's talking to you about mental health abuse or sexual abuse, what would you like to say to them, to like the people hearing it? Like, what could you do for the people who experience this?
Right. I think yesterday we made a post on how can you support someone who's being abused.
Okay.
And so it's very fresh in my mind. I think couple of things is, one, listen to what they're going through if you have the capacity.
Correct.
Listen to them instead of problem solving. Ask them if they even need help and in what way they would want to be helped, because we can have our own ideas of what they should be doing, but that's not, they know their situation better than anybody else, right? We can suggest things if they ask for suggestions, but we can't impose our ideas on them.
For sure.
So listen and ask them if they need anything. Talk to them only when it is safe for them, because a lot of times what happens is when you're being abused in families or in abusive relationships, your surroundings might not always be safe for you to talk about. And if you talk about it, you might land up in more violence. And being understanding of that is very important. So finding out when it's safe for you to talk to them is also important. Third, I think, is not using words slash, sentences that make them feel like they are wrong. Because I think when people go through abuse, there's a lot of chatter in their own brain that maybe I did something. There's a lot of self-blaming that happens, right? So you also need to ensure that you're not adding to that. You're not victim blaming at the end of the day. And I think lastly, what I would say is have your own boundaries.
Correct.
Which is very important for your own self. As caregivers, as people who are being there for others, it's very important for you to understand when it's becoming too much for you. You can't pour from a glass empty. If it's becoming too much for you, you need to be like, you know what, I need to take a break. If it's okay, I'm very triggered right now, can I take a moment before I come back to this conversation? Or I'm really not in the mind space for you to rant to me today. And that's okay. Saying that is okay. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't always have to be there for other people. If you're there 1% for yourself as you're for other people, you've done a good job,
Yeah.
So create those boundaries. I think that's very important. I think boundaries actually help you ensure that your relationship is more long lasting and healthy.
Correct. Yeah. Otherwise, you might end up resenting the person.
Exactly.
If you pour from an empty cup and it'll just become a whole lot of negativity. I see where you're coming from. Another question that from the answer is you mentioned victim blaming, right? And that's a huge issue when it comes to mental and sexual abuse, where you feel like, oh no, I was drunk, so it was my fault. He got to do that to me, or you feel like, oh yeah, I was a girl, I was late at night, and and the worst part is there are many times when somebody talks to their friends or parents about this, and you hear this from them as well.
Of course.
So what would you like to tell to someone who's stopped opening up because they've only been listening to victim blaming? And what would you like to tell to them?
I think this is a lesson I also learned the hard way, was not everybody deserves our vulnerability. Vulnerability is a strength, but not everyone deserves it, and not everyone is in the capacity, accept our vulnerability, right? And what I mean by that is we need to choose the people we share with. And not everybody is like that, right? I know a lot of people are, but I've also seen a lot of people who aren't. And it's not your fault that they respond that way, but it's also your duty to safeguard yourself.
For sure, yeah.
So it's very important who you choose to say what to, And if you notice, what I do personally, this is just my coping mechanism, is I do testers, which might not even be healthy, actually, I don't know. But basically, I'll share a little bit, things that I'm okay sharing with, to see their response. Only when I feel safe and comfortable with that person will I actually go to the second level of sharing or the third level of sharing with them. First of all, it was very difficult for me to open up.
Yeah.
And then when I started, I didn't know who to open up to. So I just opened up to a lot of people and end up hurt. Then I closed off again.
Yeah.
And then my therapist taught me this, that everyone doesn't need to be at 3 level of sharing. They have to earn that.
Wow. Yeah.
So you start small. You see how they're reacting. You see how you're reacting to them sharing. Then you build the relationship going up.
Wow. I like the 1 level, 2 level. I like that metaphor. I'm definitely using that. Another thing is that you mentioned how you believe that vulnerability is a strength, right? It's a beautiful thing to feel and to express. You know that, I know that, a few of our viewers might know that. But what would you like to say to those people, who believe that, oh, therapy is for the weak, seeking help is for the weak, and crying or vulnerability is weak? So, and just that whole taboo against mental health and therapy, what would you like to say to destigmatize that?
I think, like I said, right, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing weak about it. In fact, the fact that you want help means that you don't want to give up. So it's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
And it's just honestly our conditioning that we're made to believe these things are not appropriate or not okay. And unlearning is a very big part of life, right? I think our tagline at iDare is unlearning these taboos and reclaiming your power. You can only reclaim your power when you unlearn all these conditioned things that we've been taught forever. And I think it's also people who judge are also the hardest people who are judging themselves.
Yeah.
So honestly, I would like to just go and give them a hug and be like, it's fine, You can also ask for help. You can also cry.
Yeah.
It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Ma'am, so this would be something coming a bit personally as well. But being a woman about to be in business myself, um, how was it like? What hardships and challenges did you face being a female CEO of your own empire? Like, were you ever shut down? Were there any unfortunate instances of like sexism, or like, how was it like? How was your journey as a female CEO?
I think, see, I can tell you the usual thing, but I think a lot of us go through it, which is, just mansplaining, not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
I think we go through it on different levels. I went through it in college. I go through it at work right now. Go through it in families.
Mhm.
It's we go through it a lot, right? And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned through this is, honestly, that's their power struggle. That's their ego struggle. It's not about me personally,
For sure.
right? If I know what I have to say is important, I will make my point. The way they receive it is not my responsibility. I can't change anybody.
Mm-hmm.
The way they receive it is their responsibility. Me saying my piece is my duty, which is what I do. That's the mansplaining part and people not taking me seriously part. Initially, it used to really bother me also because I'm really young.
Yeah.
So I'm like only 26 and I started working really young as well. So, people would just be like, oh, what is this kid gonna do? Right?
Mhm.
I got a lot of that, a lot of this girl, like, so many people, like relatives and stuff, would say my work is a project.
Mhm.
But somebody like my brother's work would be like, oh, he has to go to office.
Yeah.
He has work.
Mhm.
While he was just doing an internship, right? He's younger than me. He was just doing an internship, but he had office and work.
Mm.
Whereas me running my company is just a project. And that happens in every day also where they're like, oh, you can take a break. No, what's the big deal?
Mm.
It's like our work isn't that important.
Yeah.
But I think that's where you and your power comes in, where you show them that, you know what, you can believe whatever you want, but I will create my own boundaries. Now, when they say that, oh, you can take the day off, initially I would just be like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But now I'm like, no, sorry, I have work. And I might correct people when they say project. I'm like, oh, you mean a startup, right? Because I'm like, sorry, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, for sure.
I think apart from the external, one of the other internal challenges I've had as a female, like founder, CEO, whatever you like to call it, is leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, what I mean by that is all our lives we've been told that leaders are supposed to be these very typical masculine traits,
Oh my God, yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be strong, you have to be very like aggressive when you talk, you are no bullshit person.
Mm-hmm.
And those are associated with typical masculinity, which is why men are supposedly better leaders.
Yeah.
And I'm not that kind of person at all. So initially when I started off, I'm a very sensitive, I would like to say compassionate and empathetic person. But when I started off, I thought that made me a bad leader.
Oh.
Because I was like, these are not typical traits in a leader. Because I've not seen people who are like that excelling as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to try it my way. I learned how to be assertive, but with compassion.
Wonderful, yeah.
How I could find my own leadership style. And honestly, speaking about it, I actually think like I've done a decent job. Initially, it took me a bit, but now, like, I actually feel like I have a connect with my team, like most people wouldn't even think about, right? Whereas, like, it's also give and take. Like, I'm able to give them that empathy and they're able to
Respect.
give it back
Yeah.
and respect that as well. So, leadership is not just, those traits that we've always been told. Women can be amazing leaders
For sure.
using, things that work for them. And I'm not saying all women are compassionate and empathetic, or that's the traits of women in general.
Yeah.
But like for me personally, I think that's what helped me.
Wonderful. I've seen this post actually, somewhere where, women had to, take role of that, the stereotypical masculine personality and traits, but they had to be strong and not smile for some reason. And there was this another, study that I did, and that I researched about again, that women, after they like get assigned a leadership role, they tend to cut their hair short. So even if you take up like wonderful prime ministers that we've had, or the Iron Lady or anyone, they all have really short hair and very to little no makeup, and then you're considered like a leader, and then you're taken seriously. And I see where you're coming from, where you have to feel like you have to shed your feminine
Traits
qualities.
to
Yeah.
be a leader, but that's not true.
Yeah. And something I've heard as well where I'd like to believe that I'm a pretty kind person, and that because of which I won't be able to take a stand for myself, and because of which I won't make a good leader. And, that's wrong. I
Yeah.
can be a good cop, I can be a bad cop as well.
Exactly. So I think also kindness, right, is a very interesting thing that you said. Because I'm kind, I won't be able to take a stand for myself.
Yeah.
But true kindness is not the same as people pleasing or niceness, is what I believe,
Yeah.
right? There's a very big difference between being kind and being nice
A
or
doormat.
people pleasing. Yeah. When you're nice and people pleasing, you're basically going with anything that people say and you're saying what they want to hear. But when you're being kind, you're actually saying what they need to hear. Right? And that's the difference. And I think when you're kind, you are saying what people need to hear. So you're being truthful also, and also with yourself.
Kind to yourself.
Yeah. Being kind to yourself is not always telling yourself that you're perfect in every situation. Being kind is also recognizing that maybe today I messed up. And that's okay. I don't have to beat myself over it. But I learned from this, So being kind is also that.
Yeah, I think people often tend to mistake kindness for weakness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, sir.
Yeah.
I can very well stand up for myself. Valid. Yeah. So it genuinely breaks my heart to say this, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of this interview. It was absolutely wonderful talking to you. It felt like talking to a mirror, honestly. And for someone that's in built an empire for herself, you're so incredibly humble and kind, and you have so much knowledge to impart, and that's so cool. And you're still so young, and with everything, whatever it is that has happened to you, pat on your back, and pat on your back for still learning, and claps for you for
Thank
being
you.
an amazing individual.
And to you as well.
Thank you. And just not just I'm building an empire that does wonders for so many people. And I think I want to thank you on behalf of survivors and people who are going through any sort of abuse. Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being such a wonderful person. It's truly so incredible.
Thank you, Avanthika. That's so sweet of you.
Anytime. So do you have any parting words for our viewers? Anything at all that you'd like to say?
I think probably just want to say, I think what we've also said throughout the conversation, that nobody is really alone. There are enough and more people out here who will go through life with you. So don't feel like you're doing this alone. You have us at iDare. Reach out to us at any time. We are there for you. So yeah, you are loved. You are meant to be seen, heard, and understood. And don't ever forget that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Beautifully said.
Thank you, Avanthika.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Not
It was wonderful doing this with you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.